Hello and a warm welcome to you and your money. I'm Bryan. This evening we're focusing on the healthcare industry. It's that time again when medical aid schemes, gap cover and primary healthcare providers reveal their 2025 benefits and contribution plans. The largest medical scheme has already announced increases that surpass the Council for Medical Schemes guidelines, and that they issued recently. And joining him this evening is healthcare expert Clayton Samsudin, Group CEO of Phoenix FSG. Clayton, good to have you on the program. So Clayton, let's unpack this. A lot of the companies already come out with the increases, and what I'm doing and what I'm going to comment on the end of the program. So I do suggest listeners stay tuned. I'm going to talk about what your medical aid costs are going to be in the next 8 to 15 years. But Clayton, if you look at pensioners' budgets and you say, what are the items that will fall away when you reach retirement? You should have education, no more education costs. You should have a home paid for. You should have no debt. And you're not going to be saving. You're not going to be saving for retirement and drawing for retirement. You're going to draw on your investments. So your costs are going to come down. The three costs that are going to keep going up: electricity rates and taxes, medical aid, and travel. And so if you're in that, what we call the active phase of retirement, those are all your costs. And I worked out that that's anything between 30 to 35% of your monthly expenses. And so if that's running at 9% and the rest of your costs are running at 6%, your inflation rate after tax is 7.25% to 7.5%. So unpack what's happened, what has happened in the industry so far, and who are the other companies we're still waiting for, and what is their expectations?
So thanks, Bryan. Certainly, look, I think firstly, the average increase of the top 6 schemes in the country is around 10.8%. And so although even it's 1 percentage point almost above 10%, we still kind of cringe when we see double digits. And so, the top 3 schemes in particular, Discovery at 9.3%, we had Bonitas at 10.2%, and Momentum at 9.4%. And when we consider those and we look at 2 of the other outliers, maybe like BestMed and FedHealth, they're over 12%. So that's quite concerning on the topic of what you've just said now. When we look at Council's guidelines, they're kind of suggesting 4.4%. And this time they changed the wording a little bit. 4.4% plus reasonable utilization increases. And if we try to establish what that is, it's between 2 and 4%. So as you know, CPI is projected at around 5.1%. I'm talking about healthcare inflation. If you add the utilization to that of, let's say, maxed at 4%, you would sit with a 9% increase. So any scheme that's increasing on average at between 9 and 10% are within those guidelines.
Clayton, many of our listeners don't know the rule of 72. Divide the rate of inflation into 72, and that's how long it takes money to halve or double. So an example, if you've got inflation at 9%, if you divide that into 72, in 8 years' time, you will be paying double what you're currently paying on your medical aid. And in another 8 years' time, you will be paying double of that, which is 4 times what you're paying today. So if you're paying 8,000 Rand today, in 16 years' time, at this inflation rate, which is likely to continue, you're going to be paying 32,000 Rand. And if you're paying 15 or 16, you're likely to pay between 60 and 65,000. Yes, those are real figures. This is not guesswork. This is what's happening with medical aid inflation. So Clayton, so everyone talks about estate planning, tax planning, retirement planning. But it seems that there's nothing more critical at this point in time to talk about healthcare planning. And I know government are talking about NHI and all those things. Maybe you'll make a comment after this. What would you suggest members do regarding the scheme they're on, having a look at everything? I mean, what do you do as an advisor?
So, look, Bryan, there's been kind of the traditional way of establishing your healthcare needs, and over the years we've kind of spoke about it, but it was mainly the same. But what has changed now is that the industry, we see a lot more primary healthcare products coming to the market. They're becoming a lot more affordable. And I think, you know, aside from what you were just mentioning about the high cost of the premium, what you've also got to understand is that members are not fully covered irrespective of being even on the highest comprehensive option. So the first thing is, you know, when you ask what are we doing, I would say what are we doing differently? And what we're doing differently is to kind of clearly state up front that you will not have full cover even if you're on the most comprehensive medical scheme. So that means you can't just, your healthcare solution or coverage cannot simply be just the medical aid. You would have to then include, well, so what happens if a private healthcare practitioner charges above the medical scheme rate in or out of hospital? What happens in cases of co-payments, deductibles, sublimits? So that emphasizes the importance and the need for gap cover. The second thing is when we get to out of hospital again, we are subjected to limited day-to-day cover or medical savings being depleted or the age-old, you know, scenario that everyone dislike, which is the self-payment gap. It means you have to have a solution for your day-to-day cover. So once you start to separate those segments, you get to a well-rounded kind of solution that should include a medical scheme, a gap cover plan, and a primary health care plan. And they all got specific needs of how they're going to assist the member in ensuring, one, a lower premium, better health outcomes, and of course, lower out-of-pocket expenses.
I think what's important, Clayton, I often get phone calls from people to say they've downsized, they've taken out gap cover, and they think they've got the same as what they had previously. And I use the one example is Classic Comprehensive, go down to Classic Saver. I'm not an expert in these schemes, but they've saved money. And I say to him, it can't be the same cover. You can't be paying 15 or 16,000 and now you're paying 8,000 and you're in the same situation.
Right.
And I say to him, what are you giving up? What does someone give up in that case?
So to be specific on the example that you've just mentioned, the Classic Comprehensive Discovery option, downgrading to a Classic Saver option, the first thing is the hospital cover, and this is I think where many people go wrong, the hospital cover is the same at 200% and it's at any hospital. So you're not kind of compromising on your freedom of choice. The rate of reimbursement is the same. But now there's this fine print, and the finer details are, one, your oncology cover is less, so it's half, meaning you'd sooner reach the limit where a co-payment is going to apply. You won't have access to over 60 chronic conditions. You'll now only have access to 27 when you downgrade. And you won't have the above threshold limit, meaning, like you'd understand on Classic Comprehensive, once your medical savings is depleted, you have a self-payment gap, and then the above threshold comes into play. On Classic Saver, once the savings is depleted, that's the end. Now, in that case, when you add...
Not hospital cover.
No.
Out of hospital.
Out of hospital, right. Now,
and a lot of procedures today are being done out of hospital.
Correct. It's day procedures. Now, here we get to the interesting parts. If you had added gap cover on your Classic Comprehensive or on your Classic Saver, it means the same thing, meaning the rate of reimbursement, depending on your gap cover, is going to increase from, let's say, 200% to 500 or 600%. So that's important. Co-payments, deductibles, sublimits, that will be covered. It's the out-of-hospital and chronic component that's impacted. So if you wanted to almost, I would say, supplement the day-to-day cover because you're now losing the above threshold benefit is to purchase a primary healthcare product in conjunction with what you have on your medical savings. So you'd use primary healthcare, the insured benefits where there isn't a limit, where it's not subjected to your medical savings account, and use your medical savings in turn where you can't use your primary healthcare plan. And that's the way, that's a more well-rounded approach to ensuring full cover.
Clayton, we talk about NHI now, and I did mention, where's NHI going to come into this? But I also noticed, I heard today on the news, that there are five organisations that are taking government to court over the NHI bill. But what is NHI going to do? When I speak about 8 to 16 years' time, people are saying, well, I'll have NHI.
Well, so the first thing you've got to understand is that, I think it's all these court cases that you're referring to, it's delaying the inevitable. you know, many of the first world countries have a social health insurance or a national health insurance, and South Africa will follow suit like everyone else. So I think by 2030 we'll have NHI. The next question is, what's my medical scheme then going to do? And the medical schemes are going to become top-up cover. So I would assume that if that was the case, most people will leave the private healthcare sector because NHI will provide for certain benefits. If that happens, I think, you know, we sit with a different scenario. And what NHI intends to do is to firstly, you know, amongst the many things, is to regulate price, bring more efficiencies into the system, and hopefully that, you know, the proponents of NHI argue that will reduce healthcare costs eventually.
Do you believe that?
Yes, I think, you know, healthcare is a social responsibility of government. You know, one way to ensure the population, you know, progress is not only through education, but also to ensure that the population are healthier. And the way to do that is through, you know, more, I think, preventative and screening programs than, you know, trying to address the problem when it happens. So I think it's looking at it in a reverse manner to say, look, let's try to build in programs that can prevent disease and illness, get the population to, you know, engage and participate in that, instead of trying to treat the condition afterwards.
Yeah. You know, you talked about understanding plans. I just got the increase on my top-up, my gap cover.
Yeah.
And it's gone up 15%.
Yeah.
So let's also remember, whilst every medical aid is different, you need to understand what makes up that medical aid. I know you've got PMBs, which all the medical aids have to provide.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
But then every top-up schemes also have different benefits. I'm paying 968 Rand for my wife and myself, and someone else paying 500 Rand. They need to understand there's a difference in cover.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And then Clayton, let's just talk, how can members best compare schemes?
So,
I mean, let me ask you this, right put it away. Are members downgrading within the existing scheme, or are you seeing a movement from one medical aid company to another medical aid? What are you seeing more of?
there's more movements within a medical scheme.
I'm going to hold that now.
Sure.
Because I know it's a difficult question for you to think about, Clayton. We're going to take a short break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.